We are on Startup Club and we are listening to The Complete Entrepreneur. Today, about our relationships and how does our startup impact with our relationship. At Startup Club, I'm just going to let you know that we have a website called www.startup.club and you can sign up to a mailing list. We've got a really two authors that have contacted us to come on to Clubhouse and talk on Startup Club next month. Two very big authors, very successful, best-selling authors in the startup space, and you're not going to know about those authors unless you go and sign up to that mailing list at startup.club. So I'd really encourage you to go to www.startup.club. Michael, you're our leader here today. I'll pass it over to you. I'm having a really bad couple of days here. Very, very upset about one of my startups and what happened. But yeah, let's get going.
Oh, it's great to be here, Colin. I'll tell you what, and Jeff and Michelle, it's fantastic to be here because this is my favorite time of the week. The favorite time is 5 p.m. Eastern Time each Thursday because that's when we take a look at the complete entrepreneur, where we examine what it means to live the life of an entrepreneur, not just looking at the business side, but we're taking a look at what's the emotional side, what's the stresses that you've got to wrestle with. And today we've got an absolutely brilliant topic. My startup is ruining my relationship or relationships for that matter. And here I am, and I'm sitting in Fort Lauderdale, down here and in Florida. And it's my last weekend. I'm going to be broadcasting this from startup.club HQ, and it's been wonderful. So before we start into things, I just want to thank all the team at startup.club for being so welcoming, for an Australian to come across the pond, it's called the Pacific Ocean, and to be here with you guys. It's fantastic. But anyway, let's take a look at this today's topic. My startup is ruining my relationships. Too many entrepreneurs climb the ladder of success to find that it was leaning against the wrong wall. What do you do when you discover home isn't what it used to be, and yet your business demands more and more of your time? This is an interesting topic, and one where uh, one that I must admit, in my 40 years of being an entrepreneur, I've really wrestled with, and how to create that balance between work and home, and you're so excited about something happening in the business, but no one really can understand why you're excited or anything like that. Um, and it's been one of the biggest challenges for me. And I must admit, it came to a head back in early 2000, well, that end of 2000. And I had to make a real decision. And the decision was, um, should I work at home or should I have an office? And I'm looking at my kids around me, and I made the decision to have an office, to work from home, sorry, to work from home. And it really was a momentous one where everyone at that time, they weren't working from home. Like your real businesses have offices and all that sort of stuff. And it was a big decision for me. Of where was I going to put my attention, everything like that. And it's not just my relationship, say, with my wife, but relationship with the kid, with my kids and everything. And I wanted to be there when they got home from school. So I made a whole series of choices, which were quite challenging at the time, and ones that I don't regret making, I must admit. Yeah, but it's sometimes really hard to make those choices as an entrepreneur, and that's an example of a simple choice. And it's something that I think that every entrepreneur at some stage will end up wrestling with. You're going to wrestle with the demands of family or loved ones and the demands of your startup. And it's not a fun decision. It's not like a black and white decision all the time. It's that gray area in the middle. So I just want to go along and put it back to you, Colin. Colin, how do you make these decisions where it's gray in the middle? Like it's really difficult. What do you do when there's such um, tension between, say, your personal relationships, and your business? and demands on time and all that sort of stuff. In fact, so Colin, so how did you manage this in your business life?
Yeah, Michael, I just got a call just as that as you were asking that question. But you know, it happened today, okay? I had a crisis over the last couple of days because my vacation rental business is based in North Captiva, and we had something called Ian, a hurricane that was massively devastating. And I have, 5 homes there, and we rent them out, vacation rentals, and uh, at I my wife was off work because they closed the school here in Fort Lauderdale because they were worried about the storm. And she got upset at me at lunchtime today because I didn't have enough time to go to lunch with her when I answered, I said, listen, I'm dealing with a crisis right now. Like I'm trying to figure out how we're going to open up our business, how we're going to actually get workers on the island, how we're going to deal with this. And I think she sort of got it then, but you can see this natural tension that exists between your family and your startup. And I realized the topic today is so like it was well-timed topic because I had this little incident. Now we can say family first all the time. And I totally, if ask me that question, I would always say family first. Okay? But there comes a time when you got to cut that deal. It comes a time when you got to deal with that crisis. When sometimes you put the family second with the purpose of putting the family first. Because if you can take care of the startup and the financial, um, what's going on in that, in the financial, benefits from the hard work you're doing at that moment, sometimes your family's got to become second place. Now, are we going to miss every soccer game? Are we going to, are we going to literally burn out our relationships uh, because we want to keep going, going, going? No, this is not I don't think we have the right to treat our family and our relationships that way. I think this is an exception, and it should be used very rarely, like I did today when I said, "Look, I can't go to lunch with you. I have to deal with this crisis." And she got a little upset at me. But the fact of the matter is, I had to sort of choose, and I chose the startup over her today, with the intent that I'm really protecting her and the family by building something here too. So it's a complicated argument. It's very easy for everybody here in the audience to say, yes, family first, family first, family first. And if you're in the audience, come on stage. We're having a really cool conversation about this. And we really want you on stage. So just raise your hand. Come on stage. I know you're going to enjoy it. Amanda, April, Tracy, Lisa, come on stage. Come and join us and let's talk about this issue because it's an important issue.
I agree with you, Colin. I think sometimes putting the business first is actually putting the family first. And it's just because the different members of the family may not be able to understand why you had to put the business first in that particular instance. And sometimes you've just got to make some quite dramatic decisions as well. I remember many years ago, it was back in the 90s, I was a quite a very successful seminar speaker. I talked on creativity, lateral thinking, management topics, all that sort of stuff, all around Australia, New Zealand. I was breaking into Asia as well. And one of the interesting things, I had one of those wake up moments where I remember waking up at home and go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and I walked straight into the wall because I had no idea where I was. You see, I went at one stage, I think it was at 70 flights in 3 months. So I was up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, constantly flying. And, and I thought to myself, what am I doing? The more successful I become, the more I'm away from my family. And at which point I completely changed around and turned my back on that particular career, although it was very successful. I was getting paid a lot of money for doing that. And went and did an MBA and reskilled myself up and all that sort of stuff. And that was, once again, a tough decision to make. And it's when I sat down with my wife and we had a long discussion about that. But it was I do remember that walking into the wall. I had no idea where it was. And I know that can happen, particularly for you road warriors out there. So I just want to go to yourself, say, Michelle, in your time as an entrepreneur, has there been instances where you said, am I making the right decision for my relationships or the business? Has there been that difficult sort of situation for you? Looks like we've lost Michelle temporarily. So I'm going to come down to Ron. Ron, it's great to have you on The Complete Entrepreneur. It's fantastic to have you, in fact. I'd love to hear from you. So welcome to The Complete Entrepreneur.
Thank you, Michael. I solved this problem by cheating. I had romantic relationships entirely with women who were brilliant entrepreneurs, uh, top executives, who loved business, who were creative, and I brought them into my ventures. They ended up being my partners, my department managers. So they were as immersed in it as I was. None of my relationships resulted in families. So there I cheated again, unfortunately, because I really enjoy children and I enjoy mentoring. But my romantic partners were all women who didn't want to have children. So that's how I got around the whole issue. I don't know if that's useful, but that's what happened to me.
That's definitely one solution for you there, Ron. That's for sure. So you're listening to The Complete Entrepreneur, and we're talking about my startup is ruining my relationships. If you're in the audience, you're saying, this is I need to share some stories or something like that. Then please stick your hand up. We'd love to hear from you, and welcome you up to the stage and to hear your thoughts on this topic. In the meantime, let's go to Lisa. Lisa, welcome to The Complete Entrepreneur.
Thank you for the warm welcome. Um, what was the question? Is it the question at the top?
Yeah, it's my startup
Or
is ruining my relationships.
um, I think my startup is the opposite. It is strengthening my relationships. The first thing that I did was do my mission, my vision, and my objectives. I did it for my corporation. And I did it for myself, Lisa the Landstronaut. And me not sticking to my own mission and vision and objectives is why I left the person that I was with. So the first was explore, the second was create, and the last one was fly. I took the quote
Another
from
form of cheating.
I took this author Toni Morrison's quote, who said, if you want to fly, you have to remove the things that weigh you down. And that was very important because when I said explore, create, and fly, it was literally explore ways about yourself that you wish to overcome or to succeed in. And it didn't have to do anything with an object, like an object that you can go touch. It wasn't about like money per se. It's just you and who you really are in your own DNA. And when I understood who I was, the person that I was with did not match my core values. So I know that I made the right choice when leaving the relationship, and it happened from the beginning. And it's just like how they say with startups, like you got to be very careful with who you let in on your startup and in your space, even because they can take away from your build, and sometimes you don't see it until you go to bed with your VC. That's no different than going to bed with someone that is not in your mission and your vision and in the likeness of your values. So that's what I come to find, and I don't regret any step that I've ever taken. So I'm Lisa the Landstronaut, and I'm done.
Hey, Lisa, thank you very much for your thoughts on that and what you shared. Really, it's a privilege to hear you share there. So, Jeff, do you have any thoughts on what Lisa was just sharing there, or your own experience with my startup is ruining my relationships?
Well, I think a lot of great points have been made. I like Ron's hack. And I do like that Lisa said that her business made her relationships stronger. I've experienced both sides of this coin in that, earlier in my entrepreneurial life, I put too much emphasis on work first, to the detriment of my family, and ultimately wasn't the only reason, but it certainly contributed to eventually a divorce. Um, and I think I've learned a lot since then. And I think one of the key things, and I started to learn this, when I was still married, because towards the end, I figured it out a little bit. And that is, it all boils down to communication too. Because if you are an entrepreneur, it's hard not to be focused on your business. And as was mentioned earlier, having a successful business is also creating success for your family. So it is tied together, but you can't do it in a silo. And I think that my business life when I was young was completely and wholly separate from my family life. And I mean that I was not communicative with my family, including my children, about what I was doing and why was I working so hard and what was I actually spending my time on. And I think, I learned that was a big mistake, because it's bad enough that you're not present, physically and or mentally all the time for your family because you're consumed by your startup, but to not share what's driving you with them, to not share, why you're consumed with this business, what are your goals and objectives, what are the things that are taking your time away from your family. If you don't communicate and share that with them, it's even harder for them to understand. So the lesson that I've learned is to really involve your family in your business. Have them understand the pressures you're under and why. Don't do it in a silo. Don't keep it to yourself. And sometimes that's hard too, especially when your business is hitting a rough spot. If you're an entrepreneur or a founder of a business, you want it to be successful, and there are times when it's not. Things are not going well. Things look like they're falling apart to you. And it's really hard to sit down with your partner and say, that business I've been devoting all this time to, well, it's really not going very well. And I actually think I'm feeling like a failure on most days, and I'm struggling with this. And it's hard to be that vulnerable and say that. But if you do, you're much more likely to gain the support of your partner and your family. So at the end of the day, I've done it very poorly. I'm trying to get better at it, and I think I am better at it at this stage of my career. But communication, being open about the stresses you're under as an entrepreneur, involving your family, your partner, your children, to the extent that they're old enough to understand, involving them in what you're going through as an entrepreneur will help things and hopefully prevent it from ruining your relationship.
Yeah, Jeff, you raised some really important points there. Really involving the family and things like that, and sort of sharing with them, because it's very easy to come home as an entrepreneur and you sort of use, I don't want to talk about about the work and all that sort of stuff. But it begs another question, which is, what should you share with your family or your partner versus what shouldn't you share? What are those things you should share, or how should you share with your significant other? Yeah, I think they're really interesting questions to go and explore. I'd love to get, hopefully Michelle's connected, and then we'll come back to yourself, maybe Ron, for a minute. But Michelle, you've connected it once again. No, it looks like she's still off there. So okay, we'll come down to Ron. Ron, what's your thoughts around that? What should you share with your significant other versus what shouldn't you share?
My answer would be essentially everything. And I'd like to talk to Jeffrey's point about involvement. We have a certain number of people right now. I'm not one of them. I think Elon Musk is my number one role model and hero. But there are a certain number of people who think that he's a real bad guy because he sacrificed his family. He got divorces. He slept in the factory for 3 years and didn't give any priority to his family. It's a lot of talk that I consider the theme of which is feet of clay. Let's find Elon Musk's feet of clay. But I think if you really imagine yourself being a child of Elon Musk, going to a school he invented. Was it Ad Astra that he invented? Uh, and let's imagine you're his child when he's sleeping in the factory to rescue Tesla for those 3 critical years when nobody knew how to make a factory productive in the auto industry. Would you like to be his child? Would you like to have Elon Musk taking you around the factory, lovingly commenting to you about what he's thinking as you pass various machines, as he interacts with people? Would that be one of the greatest treasures of your life? Would that be maybe worth $1 billion? Would it be emotionally a wonderful experience rather than his abandoning the family? And I'll pause there. This is Ron.
Hey, Ron, I'd like to challenge you a little bit, if you don't mind. You said you were asked the question, you said share everything. What if your spouse doesn't have the capacity to deal with the roller coaster? And
Well, there,
and your kids too. So we're talking relationships. So you're talking about kids, you're talking about your spouse, you're talking about close friends. Maybe it's a little different with close friends and a spouse. But what if we can't assume that everyone's spouse can handle the roller coaster. I mean, a startup is freaking hard. It is do or die every single day. So sharing everything, I'm challenging you on that one.
thank you. I appreciate the challenge. Um, well, there
All
again,
in good
remember,
fun too. All in good fun.
yeah, I hear you. Remember, I'm the guy who cheated. I had relationships with all these women who were entrepreneurs and executives. So in a way, I screened them for their ability to handle it. And some of them rescued my ventures in various ways. Can I tell a quick story about that? 1 minute story. Um,
As long as there's a quick one there, Ron.
yeah, Gisela. I had a inviting department. I won't tell you the details. They invited people, and the number of percent acceptances were down. And I figured out what happened, and I tried to get the head of the department, the head of the inviters, the head of the department, the head of operations to come around, and none of them did. None of them really agreed with my assessment. So I fired them all and installed Gisela, my romantic partner, who was a financial executive who didn't speak fluent English. And here she was managing a verbal department brilliantly. She got all the metrics back to their old level. And for the rest of the 12 years that I was CEO, it maintained that level. So not only did my romantic partners accept my challenges, sometimes they were the rescuers.
So you bring up a whole other issue about working with your partner. And I'll tell you right now, I could never do that, Michael. I could never work. And I know you've been traveling now for about 3 months with Rosalind, your
Yeah,
wife, and she's, in many ways contributing and helping. But my style in business, like I come in, I'm staccato. I bark orders, I do this. It's my style, and we get things done. And I think people respect me for my style. Don't get me wrong, I'm not mean. I try to be respectful, but the fact of the matter is, I move very quickly. It's very, very, very intense. I come home. If my wife were to see me in the business environment, she gets so upset. She does see me in the business environment, and she does get so upset at me about the way I communicate with other people. Oh, you should talk to them, get to know them. You should be understanding their needs and everything. No, I got to get things done. I need to get things done, Michael. So I can't have my wife in the
yeah.
room. I literally have to be outside the room when I'm doing business. I cannot have her in the room.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think there's a few things here. Is I've been married for 35 years. In fact, we had a 35th anniversary on this recent trip, and I celebrated it with my wife and my COO in an airport eating pizza. So it was a momentous occasion. Trust me.
Understanding. She's very understanding, though. She's very
She's a,
understanding.
yeah, she's very understanding. But I think the question you were asking earlier was, should you share everything? And when I look back at my entrepreneurial journey, I definitely have not shared everything. And one of the things that I determined was, can my wife help in this situation or not? And if she cannot help in this situation, then I do not want to burden her with whatever problems I'm wrestling with. What I will do though is I'll sit down with her and I'll talk to her in an emotional voice, which is, I'm having a really bad day. There's some things have gone wrong. I just need a hug or something like that. And so I'll talk in those terms. But every time I cross that line with my wife, um, then what can end up happening is she hears the burdens, but she never hears the resolution of them. So I've moved on, just like you're sort of saying, Colin. You've moved on because you need to get stuff done. So I'm moving forward as fast as I possibly can, like any good entrepreneur should. But meanwhile, my wife is left there thinking disaster has just befallen everything, and oh no, what do I do and everything. She hasn't heard the fact that I resolved things and moved on like 8 hours earlier.
Why not?
Yeah, yeah, because I just forgot to tell her that part. Yeah, so it's quite a difficult situation. So it's rare. I try to make it very rare that I share the particular details, and I more speak with my wife about my emotional state of what I'm going through. And it could be the highs, it could be the lows, and that sort of stuff. And so I talk to her about my emotions. I don't talk to her about my tasks, that I'm wrestling with a particular client, or I'm just trying to sort out a supplier and that sort of stuff, or some disasters befallen the server, suffered a DDoS attack or something, whatever it is. It doesn't. She can't do anything about that, um, and those things. But what she can do is brace me emotionally. That's something she can do. That's on one sort of side. The other side, as you've noticed, Colin, is quite often, particularly on a trip like this, I'll take her to business meetings with me, like we'll be having dinner with a client or something like that. And the reason why I do that is I've discovered over the years, over the last 35 years, that she has incredible insight into the people by hearing the conversation. And you can learn an enormous amount by the way the person across the table will interact, in my case, with my wife. And I can learn an enormous amount about the character of the person I'm about to deal with. And so I'll take her to events at conferences and everything like that. And what people don't understand is quite often my wife is essentially interviewing them, determining, is this a person which is going to be trustworthy and so forth like that. They don't realize that, and we talk afterwards. And I find she's like my secret weapon in that regard. And that's been really good over the years. The other thing I found with her, and then I'll pass it back across, say, to yourself, Colin, is I found she has an amazing intuitive business sense where she cuts the chase in things, such as like clockwork. She has this saying, like clockwork. In other words, get a good recurring business model. Um, and it's better to have the $50 today than it is to have the $50,000 one day. It's like get that reoccurring business model going. Um, and so she has this, like another saying she'll have would be, I love contracts, but I like the money in the bank more. So she really cuts to the chase with a lot of things because she's seen a lot of the ups and downs over the years. And she's created these sort of mental frameworks for her understanding things in an entrepreneurial sense. And and she sort of grounds me a lot more. And that's been an enormously positive thing. Um, but anyway, like we're all different, and we all have different relationships and how we interact with them. And one of the things I'm blessed with is a wonderful, incredible woman who, for the last 35 years, has been, dare I say, the anchor in my life, which has been fabulous. But anyway, Colin, I hope that answers some of your questions around this topic, though.
Look, I can't do it, Michael. I just can't do it. Like when I go to conferences, it's very expensive. A lot of people go with me or whatever, and we have very little time, and I got to do business from the time I wake up, breakfast meeting, lunch meeting, dinner meeting, go to the evening drinks, go to the bar 1 in the morning, cut deals, cut deals, cut deals, go to the next. And every time I've ever tried to bring in my wife into it, she gets very upset at me and she says, "You're not spending enough time with me. We should be touring the city. We should learn, do this thing and that." And I said, "No, it's a business thing. I got 3 days to do this. And after 3 days,
I,
it's over."
I'm with
Right?
you on that.
Your wife, Rosalind's more accepting of your approach. My
Yeah,
my
yeah.
my my thing is my style of business doesn't work well when around her. And second, I need to maximize it. It's not a vacation, and I don't think she quite gets that. So it's like everybody's different,
Yeah,
right?
it
And
is
I'm
actually
curious what Lisa's. I'm curious what Lisa thinks about this too.
yeah,
But anyway,
exactly. We'll come down to Lisa. But in order to answer your question, just before we do, you're listening to The Complete Entrepreneur. We're talking about my startup is ruining my relationship. And this is where the real rubber hits the road for many people, where in many instances, they give up their startup because of the stress on the relationships, or vice versa. They give up the relationships because of the startup. Yeah, and running that edge of the razor blade as such, on the balance beam there is really quite difficult. If you're in the audience right now and you're saying, "My gosh, I've got some questions to ask. I'm going through something right now," or whatever it is, hey, stick your hand up. We'd love to have you up on stage. We want to hear from you. So stop being like lurkers and start being participators. Be the startup person you are and come up on stage. Anyway, it's Colin, I think it's an interesting one. Like, my wife knows, Rosalind knows, that when I'm at the conference, for instance, it's game time for me. I'm just like, go, 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 go. And I end up like 20-minute meetings and that sort of stuff. It's almost like speed dating at some points. When there's a function on, I'll have her there. Um, or if I need to have her to help, say, with a session or something like that or whatever, that's fine. She'll be there, but otherwise she can explore the city by herself. I'm there to do business, and it's very clear that I'm there to do business, and I make it very clear beforehand I'm there to do business, and that's what I'm there for. So it can be
so
quite
why
difficult.
invite her if you just ignore her for the weekend?
Sorry, was that?
Why invite her if you're just going to ignore her?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I don't ignore her. What I do is that, like, if there's a function on at a conference in the evening or something like that, then I'll have her along. Um, or if we are going out to dinner with a client, something, I'll have her along. So I find she's actually another set of ears, and I can ask her a whole lot of questions afterwards, um, about that particular discussion or something like that, and she'll pick up on things that I may not have picked up on. So that's the reason why I have her along. And I like, and at the end of at a conference, you could be in some sort of different part of the world. Um, then ideally, I'd like to be able to spend a day afterwards, or something like that, or two afterwards, if we can go and do something fun. Because there has to be that give back as well. But anyway, yeah, so it's my startup is ruining my relationship. And I feel like maybe it's like Dear Annie or something like that. Can you help me out here? But for entrepreneurs. But so what should you share with your partners? But I want to jump down to Lisa. You've been listening to this conversation, Lisa. Do you have anything else to add here, or you just want to continue on, us continue on? But do you have anything to add on what should you share with your partner?
So I kind of heard like four or five different things. There was the conferences. So is it what I share with my partner around conferences? Is it?
Yeah, it's not just sharing with your partner around conferences. It's more about the interaction of what should you share about your business with your partner.
Like
Um,
the roller coaster, the really
it's
bad things. Do you share that
Yeah,
or
the
not?
really
Like
bad things,
that's
the really like it's like this is the classic case of we just got $1 million deal the very next day. Oh no, it's been delayed 6 months. It's like it's that roller coaster or something like that, and which can be quite difficult for many people.
I mean, there's this part where you just gotta know, like, how much they're willing to say about you in the stress of times. For instance, one day they decide they hate your guts because you didn't wash the dishes or whatever stupid thing. Like, is what they're saying going to literally make what you're building fall, even if what you're building is for them? And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes in the beginning, is that I feel like people should take a journey that they're willing to walk with somebody within, because in essence, like, your family is your wealth. There's so many people who have abandoned territories and estates, and they end up giving it all up to nonprofits, and it was just the chase of what is known as modern day or even ancient success. Like, George Washington's 5 kids, like, the last kid, they all lost the properties to taxes, and in the end, a female nonprofit ended up owning it to save the land. So George Washington plantation is not even owned by his kids. And so that whole thing with what you should share with your spouse, I mean, I feel like that trust has to be built. And I've gone to a conference with a significant other, and how I would move in a conference on my own is very different than when the person was there. They were watching my every single movement. Oh, you were standing too close to this guy. Oh, you were. And it's like, when I'm on go time, I'm moving. I really am not even looking at a lot of the other things that they may be looking at. And also, to go to what Ron has divulged about himself and his mannerisms with how he flirts and has sex with with the women that he works with. And I feel like, for a female entrepreneur, the guy who's with the female entrepreneur who is the CEO of a company they're building, they just know how guys are. But then that level of trust has to be there and built. Like, it's pretty much that, and it still circles back to
Were-
values. The guy
Lisa,
that I
were you talking about me when you referred to Ron a moment ago?
Yeah, because you said you were having sex with different women in your
No, you utterly misunderstood. I said my romantic partners, women I was in committed, long term, live together relationship. They happened to all be women who were brilliant managers and entrepreneurs. You sort of characterized me, I hope you didn't intend this, as a guy who was fooling around with people in my company. Not at all, Lisa.
I mean, I just heard what I heard. You can go back to the replays. Maybe that's how I internalized it, but from what I got, every single woman or a majority of the women that you were in the office with and
No,
you
no,
had
utterly no. Completely
okay,
your
well then
fantasy.
I must have gotten it. I
Yeah,
must have gotten
Completely,
it.
utterly your fantasy.
yeah. I think that
I must have
one of the
got it
one of the
mistaken. I'm not trying to go down a path. All I'm saying is that when it comes to the whole business versus relationship thing, my experience of going to a conference, the after everything is done, and then we're gonna have a conversation of what you did and did not do and how close you were to people. My mind, just like everybody else's who's probably running business, it's like, okay, how many business cards do I have? Okay, who can go for what product? Which one will be a value relationship or not? Did I like this person's attitude, or how do I feel when I spoke to this person? And will this just be a one and done, or something that I can see a strategic alliance or relation? Like, you're thinking about that stuff. So I think that's kind of like that whole balance between what you should tell versus not. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, Lisa, it's interesting you say that. It's like that's how I feel. I feel the same way. Um, I feel like I don't want to be judged. I know I got to perform. And whether we admit it or not, everything's a performance. 50% of business is show business. And we got to go out and we got to play our best game. We got to be Wayne Gretzky or whoever that is in our industry. And I just don't want the judgmentalism of my spouse there seeing that I'm doing it this particular way and I do it that particular way and whatnot. So for me, I go to those conferences, just be myself and go and kill it. Go score the goal. Come home and you know, I bring home the whatever and deliver. But when my spouse is there, I feel awkward. I feel uncomfortable. I feel, you know, Jeff knows what I'm talking about here.
You
I don't
feel
Yeah,
I
but
watched,
I think,
man. You be like, damn.
I
I
think,
feel uncomfortable.
but it all goes back, I think, and again, I'm still learning, after 40 some odd years, but it's a communication issue too, right? You need to know your partner, your spouse, and you know what type of person they are and how they would fit in these environments. But I still think if you communicate the opportunity, but be honest about it. So I've brought my partner with me very successfully on a number of business trips, and then other business trips, she decided not to go because I'll try to say up front now, hey, I have this opportunity. We're going to go to Amsterdam for a conference, but I am going to be tied up 100% of the time on these 3 days. But then at the end of that, we'll have a day or two that we can do stuff together. But during these 3 days, I'm literally committed from breakfast to drinks at midnight with business. And if I go out to a business dinner, you're welcome to join me, but you don't have to. And would you be interested in going to Amsterdam? And then it's up to her to say, yeah, I'll go or I won't go, but she's got to know up front what the situation is, and sometimes she said yes, and sometimes she said no, because it wasn't a place where she felt she could entertain herself while I was committed for those 3 days. So it all boils down to communicating, and even Colin, in your case, even if your spouse, you don't want her there, at least if you give her the opportunity, but lay out the ground rules first and say, look, if you want to come with me on this trip, here's how it's going to be. I'm not going to see you on these days at all, right? You're going to have to be on your own. And if you're not going to be comfortable on your own, then you shouldn't come. But if you are comfortable to be on your own these 3 days, then come on. And then we'll have you'll have an experience. So at least for me in recent years, that level of communication has been successful. And sometimes she'll come, sometimes she won't come. But when she does come, she knows up front, what the situation is going to be. So to me,
And
it's
so
all
that's
about
sort of the
communication.
lesson. That's what I learned today about you and Michael was really this idea of establishing guidelines for going to the conferences and actually interacting with like doing your business and at the same time you sort of set up the parameters in advance.
Exactly, and you've seen it in action, Colin.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. And by the way, sorry about that. The Clubhouse app crashed on my phone, and so I vanished. But I'm back here now. That's exactly right. It's set those ground rules, which is, and I think one of the interesting things also is understanding how to communicate with your partner in a better way, or not just
But
partner
Michael,
with your
I don't want
kids.
to call it. Which is sorry for interrupting. But I don't think we should call it set the ground rules, because then it sounds like you're dictating to your partner. Here's how it's going to be. I would approach it differently and say, look, this is the situation. This is how this conference is set up. These are my responsibilities, and therefore these are the times that I won't be available. And then it's up to you. If you'd like to join me, I'd love nothing more than having you there. But I just want you to know beforehand that this is the situation, as opposed to ground rules. Okay, you can come with me, but this is what you have to do, right? So I
Yeah,
don't like
I
using it
agree
as
with you, Jeff.
ground rules.
Yeah, I think it's more a case of setting the expectations. And making sure the expectations are right. And maybe that's a better way of viewing that. Because I agree with you around the whole term of ground rules. And I think it's a part of this. I just want to move on from sort of the whole sort of conference scenario and everything like that into how can you improve your relationship and also drive your business? Because I actually think you can do that. Let me share with you a quick story. I remember I was having real trouble relating to my daughters. They're teenagers at the time and everything like that. And what's the gold rule? Ask a teenager about life while they still know everything. But it was very much like that. I try to give the world, do all that sort of thing. And then I went along and and so around the dinner table, it became quite tense at night many times, and I felt like I was almost under assault. So I was at work, I was under assault, fighting away for the startup and all that sort of stuff. You sit down at the meal table where you should be able to relax, and you're under assault again. This time it's more personal. And one of the interesting things I ended up researching was how to actually go along and have a different type of conversation. And I learned this from the FBI negotiator Chris Voss. And I did a whole lot of reading up on him and all that sort of stuff. Some of the techniques. And one of the things he did was he shared about a technique called mirroring, which is when one of my daughters went along and said something like, "I really like that particular singer," blah 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 blah. Then all you do is you get the last sentence or the last few words, and you say, "Oh, that particular singer," and you turn it into a question. And so one meal, I sat down with my wife before and said, "I'm going to do this. I just want to try this and see what it works like, how it goes." And so we had an amazing conversation. All I did was just mirror continuously back to both my daughters and everything like that. And so we got up and I left the dinner table, and both of them said, "Oh my gosh, Dad has changed. What's going on with him?" It was a fantastic conversation and all this sort of stuff. Talking to my wife, and she fed it back to me, the feedback. And it was interesting. What I found was this: I wasn't really listening to my significant other or to my kids. I said I was listening, but I really wasn't. And by having just using that technique of mirroring, it forced me to really listen. And I could really pay attention to them. I had no choice because I was using this technique. And it was a transformation of how I interacted with them. And it was really eye-opening. And I remember one time Rosen would say to me, "You need to understand that when you finish business, you haven't finished business. You can sit at the meal table at times, and the temperature of the entire room drops by 10 degrees because you're under stress about some sort of issue." And that was an interesting side of itself as well. But the communication one and listening was absolutely key to transforming the relationship with my daughters. And I don't pretend you are listening because you probably aren't. You're probably thinking about something happening in your startup versus really paying attention. So try mirroring. And Chris Voss is the guy's name. And read up on him. He's an amazing guy. I would highly recommend it. So I want to come to yourself, Colin. How do you go with listening? Do you really listen, or do you find your brain is still at work?
Why, that's a challenge, right? Um, Listening is not my strength. It's probably one of my weaknesses.
It's
So,
it's my weakness too.
you
So
know,
would you like?
like you get distracted. Business is very distracting, right? And you bring up a bit of a different issue is that we have to remember anniversaries and birthdays and stuff like that. But sometimes you get so involved and so you're so into it that you don't do that. I know I'm twisting. I know I'm changing the topic, Michael. I'm horrible at listening. What do you want me to say? Like I'm not a good listener. Okay, like
Yeah,
I'm trying to like change the
I'm
topic
a
here,
good,
but
yeah, I'm a good dictator.
I know
It's,
exactly. I
yeah,
can
yeah.
I can
Like, just I
dictate
need to get
orders.
from
I can
point A
blurt
to
out
point
orders,
B.
and
Yeah, I need to
look,
get from
I've
point
gone to
A to point B.
honestly, we've gone to psychologists together. We've talked about it. I've learned about active listening. Try to repeat back what like I think I'm starting to learn about how to do this a little better. Um, It's not one of my best traits. I don't know why you picked me for this question.
Because
We got
I thought you'd be the person.
we
But
got
let's just
Steve
jump
on
down.
stage now, right, Rob? We got Steve on stage, right? We got others on the stage here. But the
Okay,
one thing about distraction, throwing Jeff under the bus here, I remember being on a trip with him, and I forgot an anniversary once, and you just totally forgot it because you're so busy. And I remember Jeff, you had forgotten a birthday once. Do you remember that with Sue and what
Oh
happened?
yeah, no, it was bad. Yeah, I mean, look, it's a roller coaster ride. And yes, I've had really bad instances where I, booked a business trip at the same time as a very important birthday, and put that first, and paid a pretty serious price for that, but also learn lessons. And the truth of the matter is, excuse me, what you really learn over time, and it's really hard when you're young and when you're an early entrepreneur and it's maybe your first or second company. It's really hard to understand that in the world of entrepreneurship, the reality is nothing is as bad as it seems, and nothing is really as good as it seems. So when you think you've got the golden opportunity and everything's going to be amazing and you're going to make $100 million, probably not the case. But by the same token, when you think that the floor is falling out from under your feet, everything is crashing down, your business is totally destroyed because this competitor came out with the exact same product before you did,
This
and
hurricane hit this house, this,
and
that, that,
everything's
that.
going to happen. But at the end of the day, it never turns out to be as bad as you imagine it. So when you get to the point when you can accept that nothing's actually as bad as it seems and nothing's actually as good as it seems, and you can get closer to the truth between those two, opposite spectrums, you can reduce a lot of your stress and do a better job of dealing with all these issues we've been talking about tonight. The world is not crumbling on a daily basis, and nor is the world, giving you that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow on a daily basis, right? The truth is somewhere in between.
and hopefully the truth will set us free, that's for sure. But I want to come down to Jason. Jason, you've been very patient just there. It's great to have you on The Complete Entrepreneur. Love to hear your thoughts on this topic.
Oh, bro, what a topic, huh? Relationships. Hard enough without a business, and then with a business, it gets pretty tough. Uh, got a little bell going off. I do agree with the other guy. My wife has a great intuition of what kind of employees I have or had, and she's really good at that. Excellent. And I guess just an open dialogue, being real honest and trying to, you know, just admitting like you're not gonna have enough time is and things like that when you're going on trips is really good points. And then, in Clubhouse, we got to try to bring value, right? So the one thing I learned, I don't know, it's a small trick. Maybe fellas, you can try and use it. Ladies, I don't know, but I always heard when your lady asks you if you need to go to the bathroom, she's not really asking you if you need to go to the bathroom. She wants to go to the bathroom. So you just have to go to the bathroom. If she says, "Do you feel like eating Chinese food?" She most likely wants to eat the Chinese food. So if you hear any questions like that, just agree and move along with it. You make a nice, smooth night of it. So that's my 2 cents.
What
Thanks
great
for letting me
advice there,
talk,
Jason.
brothers.
That's great advice,
I'm
Jason.
I'm not
Thank
a,
you.
I'm not a startup guy. I just got a little surf shop in Hawaii. I go back and forth between Japan and Hawaii a lot, so I got a lot of distance relationship tips. Maybe not, but it's hard to do. But we make it work. Sometimes we got to remind ourselves how good we got it,
How
especially when we
true.
got that time off and that that quality time. It's good.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Jason. I just want to jump down to Steve. Steve, welcome to The Complete Entrepreneur. So, what's your advice for us with when your startup is ruining your relationship? Welcome to the stage.
Thanks. Yeah, there's probably quite a lot of advice there. I mean, it's like you've got to find out what the problem is with the relationship. I mean, obviously, with a startup, neglect can be one of those things. But like most of you are saying, communication is what I believe to be the key, and it's not just with your relationship; it's with your business as well. It's like with a startup, you got to build a good team. So it's down to the people you've got involved. It's down to having a good product, and then it's about having the good process and the systems in place. So it's about having that communication with that team so that you'll be able to handle any situation. It can be about delegation as well. It can be setting up that system so that you have fewer problems, and then to you have that business running with those systems that you are able to kind of spend time, focus on your family, your relationship as well, but then also communication with your partner and family and friends. And I just from reading up on all that kind of thing, I mean, I'll go to it's like working with different startups and different businesses over many years. Um, that communication is so key, as well as the structure of your business. And I mean, it's highlighted in the shows, kind of like Marcus Lemonis, the prophet, going into the business. You have different personalities and different people with say control issues or uh, y- interpersonal stuff. You just see a lot of arguments between different people, who often are family, business partners. And so, communication is so key in that side of it, but also, like I say, the relationship. So one book that I really highly recommend is it's called Nonviolent Communication. It's actually a workshop. It's written by Marshall Rosenberg, and Microsoft use it. So the executives use it there. It's for pass through of just like you're saying about judgment, finger pointing, blaming. Non-violent communication sets up you in to be able to have the tools to communicate better with people. Um, and so it's bringing a more positive communication, and that really comes from we had a lot of conditioning when we grow up. It's like as children, you're not supposed to communicate, see and heard. There's a lot of uh, 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 abusive situations. There's a lot of communication where it's like you don't talk from your emotions, you don't tap into your needs, feelings and desires, so we just don't know how to communicate about how we feel or anything. And that's what kind of really what the book focuses on. It kind of it goes into the first couple of chapters of breaking down how you are as a person, how you're made, the conditioning you have, and the way you communicate. um
Yeah.
then it gets into then tapping into that of asking people the right questions, how they feel about things. And it's
Steve, Steve,
yeah.
I think you've really tapped into something you just there, and something like that. And I really do appreciate you sharing that. It's about the communication, isn't it? It's how do we communicate with our loved ones? And appreciate you sharing about that book. What was the name of that book once again?
Yeah, so it's non-violent communication, and then
Non
really, like I
Nonviolent
say.
communication. That's always a good thing to have when you're dealing with a significant other, isn't it? Is to have nonviolent communication. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
There
There's
are
a lot of
two
good books
clubhouse
out
groups.
there.
There are two clubhouse groups on nonviolent communication
Yeah.
incident.
Thanks a lot for that, Ron. There's a lot
Okay,
of
so
really
just so you
good.
know, Kim's standing by here, and she's read the book as well. I just came into the kitchen and I asked her about that book, and she highly recommends it
Yeah.
as well. And she says, "I have a copy for you, Colin." So
There's a lot of really great books out there. One book which really impacted me in my communication and understanding also something about myself. And I mentioned it on the Complete Entrepreneur before, is The Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman. And it's very simple to understand, where the five love languages are words of affirmation, like how are we communicating to our loved one, words of affirmation or physical touch or receiving of gifts, quality time, or acts of service. And each one of us responds differently to those love languages. For instance, if you went along and wanted to spend quality time with me, I'd be like, "You got to be kidding me. Do you have any idea what my schedule looks like?" On the other hand, if you go along and do a, hey, Michael, you're doing a great job, man, that I'll run with that for the rest of the week. Yeah, so we can respond very differently, and likewise with my wife or my kids and everything like that, they all respond very differently. So I communicate in a different way to them, in a way that they will understand and appreciate the most. And it's that really impacted me a lot. Um, but gee, what a topic we've had! What a topic! It seems to me like this is almost like one that it needs to continue to go on. My startup is ruining my relationship. I think we've only just scratched the surface of this one, but
Hey,
sadly we've
Michael.
come to the end. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
Colin.
I just wanted to mention to Ron. I want everybody to know here that, and I wish Lisa could have stayed on as well. That Ron's come on this show many times. He's a totally upstanding person, and I think there was a little bit of a misunderstanding in his interpretation. And I just wanted to come out and say that. And Lisa, hopefully you're in the audience, or you'll pick it up on the replay. But thank
Thank
you,
you,
Ron.
Colin. Yeah, she
Yeah,
totally misunderstood what I was saying.
yeah.
Thank you.
I agree with that as well.
100%.
100%.
100%.
Yeah, 100% there, and that's exactly the way I heard it, Ron. So I appreciate you being here on a regular basis as well. So thank you very much for your input and your open and honest input too.
Bless you guys.
Um, so so thank you very much for that. But anyway, so we've been listening to the Complete Entrepreneur, and balancing relationships and entrepreneurship can be challenging, but there's nothing like a strong relationship to back you up in those difficult times. Yeah, there's something special about that. And there's been times when I've sort of come home from a conference or something like that, and I'm just run out. There is nothing left in the tank. And all I want to do is sit down with Rosalind and have her give me a hug, and that's it. Or sit down and talk about what's been happening around the house or whatever. And it's those times which then begin to fill up my energy reserves once again. And there's nothing like that. Yeah, so, but anyway, startup.club, an incredible organization with amazing people behind it. I'd love to hear some more. What's going on there with startup.club, Colin?
Well, at the beginning of the show, I mean, I usually do an intro before people come on, but I mentioned we have two very big authors coming on next month. They're best-selling authors. They're coming on the show that Jeff, Michelle, and I do every Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern, called the Serial Entrepreneur Club Hour, and we try to decode what it is that serial entrepreneurs do over and over again to start, scale, exit, and repeat. And we have two big authors, best-selling, but you're not going to know about them unless you go to startup.club and sign up to that mailing list. I mean, we do an email list. I think we do an email once per week to let you know who the big speakers are that week on Startup Club. We had the founder of Reebok on. We had Mr. Wonderful on. We pre-announced him showing up on Startup Club. We have had Jeffrey Moore on our show, right, Jeff, on Fridays. We've had so many great speakers and billionaires coming on, but you're not going to know about it unless you sign up to that email list. And that's all we do, is we just let you know who's on Startup Club that week. So check out startup.club. We're heading towards 1 million members. If you're not already a member, it's time to get involved. Sign up to become a member, and also get on stage. We love it when Jason, Steve, Lisa, I know you're not here, and Ron, you came on stage and contributed, because that's what this is all about. It's a conversation. It's not one way. It's really about a live conversation on Clubhouse. Thank you, everyone.
Isn't that so true? And next week, the topic we're taking a look at on The Complete Entrepreneur is my friends are relaxing and I'm still working. You're jealous of your friends that seem to have it all, a secure job, time off, benefits, and yet there you are working your butt off for what? And that's the topic for next week, which is going to be really, I think, a great topic. Have you ever felt that way where you just got like, seriously, I'm going to keep on working. I'm doing 12 hours a day. And you end up getting a little bit jealous? Well, that's the one we're going to be impacting next week, and I think it's going to be a great topic. So I'd love to see you all there. Thank you very, very much to my fellow moderators, Colin, Jeff, and Michelle, and to those who came up on the stage, Ron, Jason, Lisa, Steve, all of you, appreciate your input. I love having people up on stage, and for you in the audience, you're the reason why we do this. And I would encourage you to come and join us on the stage next time because it's going to be a great conversation. God bless. See you at 5 p.m. Eastern Time next Thursday on The Complete Entrepreneur. God bless.